So I've been thinking a lot about reasonable expectations in 2023 and how we set them, what can go wrong, what can mess it up for us as we're going through in our journey. Resolutions are these things where usually we give them up by February, but then we feel like we failed and we're like guilting and shaming ourselves for that in the process. For myself, I've been thinking a lot about our goals and plans for the year. I have a lot of things on the docket that I'm nervous about that are new and exciting. And I find that I struggle the most just with perfectionism and being okay with still making mistakes, even though been told by multiple therapists that like new mistakes are a sign of progress. And that was something I really struggled with when I got out of my really abusive relationship is when I would face a mistake, it would still be a mistake. And I would still just shame and get mad at myself. Like when I was dating and then I chose a partner that was a little too similar to my ex. And then I was like, well, why did I date him? Why did I choose him? What's wrong with me? What have I not healed? And that kind of thing. But also recognizing that I didn't then stay with that person for like nearly 10 years and have children with them and marry them and buy houses with them. Like I just dated them for a couple of weeks and then left the relationship. Like it was still a mistake, but it was a different kind of mistake. And I didn't stay in it for as long. And new mistakes are always sign of progress. And that's something I really have to remember for myself is that I'm human. I'm still going to make mistakes, but at least they're not the same old, the insanity of what it was like for me being in an abusive relationship, doing the same thing over and over again, somehow expecting a different result. But for myself, I really like what we talked about in our last episode about reintegrate because I tend at this point in my life to really shame myself for not being, I guess, I guess not speaking up for myself more in my romantic relationship. There's been definitely some shifts. My husband has his job has really gotten more intense. We had to pull my daughter out of daycare because it wasn't a good fit for her. And I really put a pause on my own career because I saw these other people's needs as more important than my own. And that was the whole reason why I got in it and stayed in a very abusive situation is because I prioritized someone else's needs, desires, happiness, wants over mine and really neglected myself in the process. And I can see myself doing that again. And I've really had to reshift and start speaking up again because it's I can't go back to what was normal for me in the past, even though that's just sort of how my blueprint is of like, this is what I need to do. I do have to sort of shift back. And part of doing this podcast this year is about taking that shift and power back of like my career matters just as much as my husband's. And why is that something I tell myself? Why is that the narrative that I have? Oh, it's because that's what it was like in my parents' relationship. That's what it was like in my relationship with my parents, that, someone else's needs always have to come before your own and your needs just don't matter. So
Yeah.
that's been me.
Yeah, that's been interesting. I resonated with so much. One is I often set goals that I maybe are way out, some things that I have not like for example, the common one for most of us is to lose weight this year. But what we're not taking into account that we don't have a decent exercise plan. We don't make time for any of that. We don't even drink enough water, and then we don't know how much we're actually eating and whether or not we could actually like facilitate a different kind of like meal plan with the way our family's eating and can afford it. I mean, there's all these parts and pieces that causes a collapse. This year I've been really thinking about goals too. But differently. I've not set any resolutions, although I did set some maybe professionals goals, but it is interesting sort of seeing how failure is such a loaded topic. And
Mm.
one of the things I've noticed, and I'd love to know if you saw the same thing is that, and I kind of heard it in your story, is that failing has been attached with such shame that we don't realize that failing, like you said, is part of success. It's part of learning a new thing. You can't tell a child learn to walk and then not expect them to fall. Of course they're going to fall. That's part of learning to walk. But when you're in an abusive situation, there's no room for that. That puts you in such a dangerous position to fail that you sort of then put this on you of I got to be perfect because I can't have the backlash. if it goes wrong, this is going to be catastrophic and I'll be really, really unsafe. You know, the good news for me was, I grew up in a home that was kind of just checked out and neglectful. So as long as I wasn't around them, then there wasn't a whole lot of comment on what I was doing. So I could do things new that were on my own and were not observed. But when I was in that 2-year marriage, everything that I did, I was with him 24/7, literally all the time. Everything I did was under constant observation, and he had to have an opinion on every single thing that I did. So it made everything I challenged myself to try scary because there's so much risk riding on it that you're right, it's really hard. In fact, I think this year is one of the first years I actually tried to set goals that it's taken. This is the 3rd year out, and it's taken that long for me to start to heal, for me to feel comfortable enough saying, "Yeah, I can risk failing because failing's gonna be part of the success." That's how we get there. But yeah, isn't it, I mean, I'm even hearing myself say how we've split it from failing and success without realizing that failure is part of success.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I was very fearful of failure because I could have a degree of control over the failure,
Mm,
because I could self-sabotage, I could check out before, when I look back at my how I was raised in my previous marriage, it was a lot of there was a lot of self-sabotage because at least I had some control over that outcome. If I was actually successful and it failed, then I wouldn't have any control over that outcome. And I mean, I grew up in a family and had a romantic relationship where nothing I did was ever good enough. So at least I couldn't lose out on something that was really amazing, like being successful. So I just had a lot of self-sabotage growing up and yeah,
say
in that marriage.
say more about the if it goes well, if it fails and you succeeded, what how does that play out?
So let's say let's say I sold a book. Okay. So let's say I sell a book, but it doesn't sell very well. Okay. That means I've done this thing, but then it failed because of something outside of my control. So
Oh,
that is way worse than I just never submit the book to be published. You know what I mean? Like I stay stuck in the, oh, it would happen if I did something, but then I just never do it. So for me, that self-sabotage was a big deal, just being fearful of success and what that might mean for me. Because honestly, also being successful would really talk against or counter the negative things that my family, my ex-husband would tell me. They're like, "You'll never do well, you'll blah, blah, blah." And also the negative things I would tell myself. Success would completely counter that. And I was uncomfortable with that idea of I really just wanted to go along with that negative frame of mind and that negative thinking because I felt comfortable.